Welcome back to the Dreamlet podcast. In this episode, it is a new month, so we're also going to start a new theme. The theme of this month is going to be about bonds and friendships. And today I have with me a longtime friend. Her name is Connie. Want to say hi?
Hello.
And we're going to talk essentially about how to form friendships that last. So just to give some background, me and Connie have been friends since high school. We became friends like sophomore year, right?
Yeah, that was around the time that I joined Drumline, right?
Yeah. I sort of like drafted you into Drumline and then quit right afterwards.
Yeah. I felt so betrayed. Just kidding.
Yeah, but high school was an interesting time. I feel like we got a lot closer during senior year of high school.
Yeah.
But to try to answer the question of like, how do you make a friendship that lasts like a very long time? Because for us, it's been over 10 years at this point that we've been friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
how exactly did that happen? And to me, my sort of answer to our specific situation is number one, we met during school, which makes it easier to become friends because we would see each other all the time. And then number two is I just like always kept in contact with you after school finished. And we would, because of our initial friendship and how like we would hang out a lot and talk a lot, it was easy to basically just continue it. So that's like the simple answer, I guess.
Yeah. I would say a lot of it is because of you, I think, because you have your big birthday party every year.
That's true.
And I know that like when I went to college and stuff, I didn't come. I didn't really have a car and like I always had excuses. But when I started going to your birthday parties, a little bit after college, I think, like that's when I feel like I started to bond a lot more with you again. Like it kind of picked up where it left off.
Yeah.
Like we always talked here and there online.
Yeah, on the
throughout
phone.
College.
Sometimes
Yeah.
too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember distinctly calling you when I was in, I think, Oakland. It was like I went to a breakdance event in Northern California, NorCal, and I was meeting some friends and they asked me to meet in Oakland or something, and it was like a bar or something. And I didn't realize they were inviting me to go to a bar, so I was in like dance clothing, but I was kind of waiting there alone and it was like kind of scary. So I just like called different people and eventually like called you and you answered, and I was like so grateful because I was like,
I remember that.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I was like freaking out.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's another reason why we stayed close, is because you were receptive to those calls. And like, even though it was random, it was completely random. Like I feel like I didn't talk to you for a little bit and then just randomly called you and you answered. So
Yeah.
so that's another reason. It's like not just me, like it's definitely the fact that you're receptive to like us communicating and keeping in contact. Because a lot of people, I guess, like they get so busy that they no longer feel like a past friendship is worth putting any effort or time into. So they just like don't try. And it's unfortunate if like, say you're the side that wants to keep that friendship going. But for me personally, I've had a lot of friends where even though I tried talking to them or reaching out to them and they're busy, I would try again like in like maybe 2 to 3 months. And maybe they're still busy, maybe not, but I'll try again in 2 to 3 months. And eventually, just eventually, I will have one day where they are free and are willing to like have a call with me or hang out and we'll catch up. So that's sort of the way I've kept up with friends. I just have them all in a list. I know it's weird. Most people don't do that. But
yeah, I remember you telling me about this list.
Yeah. And I actually rank my friends. I know that's not like the best thing to admit, but it just helps with like organizing who I should contact first, you know, because they are my closer friends, so I want to keep in contact with them more. It's all coded too, or I mean like they have code names, so if somebody were to see my list, they wouldn't know who's who, so they don't know who, like where they rank in my friends list.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
that makes sense. I think there's people who put in a lot of effort, or like people will put in more effort to reach out to friends and try to like maintain friendships. And then there's people who don't do that naturally. Like I don't really do that naturally. I don't spend a lot of effort, you know, reaching out to people because I have a little bit of anxiety around that. Like I know if someone like wants to hear from me or like talk to me and I like weird about it. I'm trying to get better at that.
Mm,
But I think the type of person I am is like I'm always going to be like receptive of that, like you mentioned.
mm.
And then there's people who are like they're not going to put in the effort and they're also not receptive. Like I feel like it's kind of like a quad graph. You know what I mean? There's like
Yeah.
the four quadrants, and then there's like different. You can be like energy and receptive, like energy non-receptive. I don't know how that one would look like,
Yeah, but
but yeah.
I can see what you mean. Yeah.
And
But
I think you're really good at putting in effort to maintain friendships. And then, like what you said about, like, you'll reach out to someone, and then if they're busy, 2 or 3 months later, like, you'll reach out again. I think that's really important. And, like, eventually, if you do end up connecting and you've had a friendship in the past, like, I think once you, like, link up and you hang out, your bond, like, strengthens, like, a lot.
mhm.
And then it's easier to keep in contact.
Yeah, definitely. It is really difficult when you haven't talked to someone in over like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but trying is still the best move you can do. Because if you don't try, nothing will ever happen unless you somehow bump into them by luck and so happen to talk to them when you bump into them. But yeah, I think trying is the best thing you can do, because even if they're not receptive, now you know. But if they are, then there's the opportunity to finally meet up again and talk and catch up. Otherwise, that won't ever happen. And I do feel like my birthday is why I keep up with a lot of people, is because I invite them, and some people come, some people don't. But even if they don't come, I still try to catch up with them a little bit. So it's almost like that time of year where I get to catch up with friends, even if they don't attend my birthday.
Because you've opened up this channel of communication through your invite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
And
makes sense.
I invite everyone personally, one by one. So that takes
Ooh.
a lot of time, but I think it makes it like better.
Yeah, like more personal.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people that go to your birthdays, so I can't even imagine like how many people you're actually inviting in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
But that reminds me of a quote. I forget what movie it's from, and I forget the exact quote, but it's something about like there's a lot of lonely people in the world who are afraid to like reach out.
Mm.
I think it's kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I do think that if we're talking about like, how to form friendships that last, true, like continuously reaching out and trying to reconnect and stay connected is probably the best thing you can do. But there's also the other side of things where like you can't view certain friendships a certain way if you want it to be long term. I'm being very vague, but what I'm trying to say is if your friend is like exhibiting behavior that you don't like for instance, they don't invite you to something, or they like had a very stressful day and lashed out at you, don't take it personally. Because a lot of times I feel like for myself, I do feel like whenever I'm left out of an invite from like friends that I clearly usually hang out with, I don't take it personally, because it's either someone forgot to invite me or they just didn't want me there, which is fine, like it's not like it's like their hangout. It's whoever hosted that hangout is basically the person that makes those calls. Yeah, for me, obviously I still feel like slightly like TFTI or like a little hurt, but I don't let it sort of damage the friendship in the sense that, oh, I'm not gonna invite this person anymore because they didn't invite me,
Yeah, I'm definitely more like team get offended and get team TFTI. But I think more recently I've gotten over that, because like you kind of have to start somewhere. I feel like I only started focusing on my friendships maybe like around the start of COVID, or like a little bit after COVID. I feel like COVID changed a lot of people, but personally I was very introverted and just wanted to stay home. But I became more extroverted and I really wanted to build friendships. And I remember in the beginning, like I wouldn't be invited to things, and I just was like, okay, I took it very personally, and I was like, no one likes me, no one wants to be my friend,
No.
so it's okay. And then eventually I was just like, I'll just go to certain things and see how it goes. And then I ended up bonding with people. It just happens like that. Like that's how life works. Like you show up to things and then you make bonds with people, and then they remember you next time, and then like you'll get invited to more things. And like if you click with certain people and you're able to be your natural self, like those are the people you want to be friends with anyway, you know, like
Yeah.
I've also been learning like I shouldn't feel like I need to change myself in order for people to like me and to invite me to things because like I wouldn't want that for myself anyway.
Definitely. I think
Yeah.
I think that's actually very important for like making long-term friends, because if you're trying to be friends with someone that who you can't feel like yourself around, and who you always have to like change yourself around, that will probably not end like very well. So it definitely takes a lot of awareness in the beginning to realize like, oh, well, you also have to learn who that person is over time, of course, but there's definitely a lot of things you can pick up on when you meet someone, and you can probably tell like this person will probably make a really good long-term friend. Or but honestly, I never really think about that. Like in theory it makes a lot of sense, but like I actually like hardly ever think about that when I'm meeting people.
I'm like reconnecting with a lot of high school friends right now, or like in the recent past, but I just feel this level of comfort with them that is just like innate now because I have known of them for so long, even though I haven't really been friends with them since high school, but I've known of them for like over 10 years now.
Right.
So like if I actually think about it, the amount of friends that I've actually made that were like fresh, I don't have very many of them, and I don't know if I even see them as super long-term friends, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
at the current stage of my life, like the friends I see having long term they happen to be like all high school people that I've known. So I wonder, like, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, long is definitely relative, but I guess forming friendships like that where it's like a continuous connection, you know, like that's pretty much all I mean when I say long-term friend, or like making friends that last, right? Because for your situation where a lot of them are people you've known since high school but weren't necessarily friends with in high school, being friends with them now based on you knowing them in high school, I feel like, is that true? Is that like why you feel more comfortable with them? Or is it because like you have mutual friends? Because I feel like a lot of times when I meet someone new, if it's through a friend that I trust and has good character, I'm like, and they seem close, I generally give them more of the benefit of the doubt, like a higher standing, because like, okay, this friend that I respect a lot is really close with this person who, you know, they probably wouldn't be close unless they were also a good person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, actually I think that has a lot to do with it because the people I'm forming like closer bonds with now, like we're all pretty much in a giant group.
Yeah.
And like we all vouch for each other in different ways. So I think that really helps. Like I'm assigning all these characteristics to people like as I get to know them. And I feel like sometimes I even like fill in the blank. Like it's like I don't know X person super well, but if I were to hang out with them, like find myself in a situation where I'm hanging out with them one-on-one, I'm like, okay, they're probably really trustworthy. They're probably kind, you know, just because they're also friends with an X number of my other friends that I'm close to.
It's good to connect through mutual friends that you trust. I feel that's like a good like indication of character, but it obviously there's exceptions, but
it kind of like fast forwards the like some of the first initial stuff.
yes.
I was watching something today and I forget the exact numbers already, but they were saying like to form like a good friend, it takes like about 20 hours. And then to form like a great friend, it's like about 100 hours of like one-on-one time or like quality time.
Really?
Something like that. Like it's like scientifically like on average. Something like that.
How did they measure that?
I have no idea.
I need to
but
know.
Like there's just it was just like the point of that one was like just there's like ways to accelerate it and stuff, but it's like if you have someone that you know for like 10 years but you only hang out like 1 hour a year, I don't know actually. Now that I think of it, like I feel like you could be close friends with someone like that, but then if for example you meet someone and then you're spending like every single weekend with them and then you just like rack up the hours, like
I understand the concept for sure. Like it's time spent together rather than time you've known each other for, and that matters quite a lot for sure. I think in combination that is essentially like what we're talking about, friendships that last like a long time. But
Yeah, like can it be like some kind of equation?
I don't think so. Everyone's different. Like for
It's true,
sure,
it's true.
these things are fun. Like the numbers are fun to look at and analyze, but obviously they're completely made up. Like I
Oh,
can't
that reminds me.
go ahead.
Sorry. Like going back to something you mentioned earlier, I did want to say one thing. Like I feel like between two friends, it's like you're building a little house together and then you both have your own way of building the house.
Mhm.
And then to build like a really strong foundation, you have to like really work together. Like I build my house this way and you build your house this way. If it's like, okay, let's do this then. And then it's kind of like a compromise to, because like yeah, like you said, every friendship is different.
Mhm.
And like to cultivate and make really strong friendships, it's different for every single relationship you have.
I think like people that I don't live close to that I still try to stay connected with, we try to set up like calls. Like I have a friend that lives in Singapore right now and I try to talk to her every month. Like we set up a phone call and we just call video chat, I guess. But there's so many different things you could use.
I know. Zoom.
But essentially that is how I like to do things because by keeping it organized and by like putting in the effort and setting up that system once, you essentially almost guarantee that you will stay connected to this friend. But of course, that friend's gonna also have to want to stay connected with you as well. So as long as you have that, like just those two things, you want to stay connected to them, they want to stay connected with you. And then the third element is creating a system where you get to connect with each other, like talk to each other or meet up. That's like all you need to stay close, I feel.
Yeah.
And then avoid any strife that comes. That's yeah.
Well, I think strife is unavoidable, but it's like how you handle it.
Yeah.
I think definitely a big part of maintaining long-term friendships is like there's probably like if you're close with someone for an extended period of time, I feel like it's almost inevitable that you'll run into some kind of like hardship with them. And it's like at that moment is when you can decide whether you'll let that break it apart forever or long term, or you can like work on it together and like resolve it and come out like on the other side.
What is our hardship? What hardship did we experience? Not to shoot down your theory, but
well, I think one that we can say is that when I was in college and stuff, I definitely was like very detached from everything. And like I knew you would reach out to me every so often and you would invite me to your birthday parties and probably the occasional hangout too. But at that time, I wasn't prioritizing friendships. And so I would kind of like, I was not very receptive to like
Gotcha.
the energy. So yeah, I think you like, so yeah, you didn't let that discourage you and you just like, you were persistent and every year you would invite me to your birthday party.
Yeah.
And then, eventually like I became receptive. I like came out to your birthday party and I had a really good time and then we like reconnected.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That essentially highlights like my entire strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like varying degrees of hardship, like that one probably wasn't like a devastating one, but
Yeah.
there are like I feel like we would have a hardship sometime in the near future.
What? Okay. That sounds very gloomy,
Like
but
ominous.
sure.
Well, like for example, if we're friends for the next like 50 years, I'm sure that we're gonna have some kind of like conflict.
Okay.
Like if we're close for the next 50 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We'll be close, but I'll make sure to be very flexible and we'll figure out the hardship as quick as possible.
Yeah, same.
Thank you. But yeah, I can see though, because like the more hangouts, the more like trips we do, especially, there's definitely gonna be some things that could come up that could cause conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting.
I think another thing that contributes to like long-term friendships is like building just a really strong foundation. Like going back to the metaphor, if you have like if you're like building a little house together and then you have a really strong foundation, like hardships, like a tornado, it's not going to like easily break, what's there. Like it would take a lot. And then I think it's the same with like little hardships. Like if they go unresolved, they can kind of like break down the foundation. And
Right.
if like the trust is lost, eventually, you know, there's a certain point where one or both parties will kind of decide like, is this like connection still worth me putting in this effort? Or like, do I trust this person enough to even put in the effort to like
Yeah.
maintain this friendship? And then it might dissolve. And at a certain point, like they might stop trying to reach out, or like they might, you know,
Yeah.
not want to continue that friendship.
I do definitely think that's a very normal, common situation. That line of thinking, especially. I was talking to one of our mutual friends recently about friendships and stuff and the mentalities that you have with friendships. And I noticed a lot of people talk about how, you know, they want to make sure they're not being treated poorly and they want reciprocation, right? Everyone wants some sort of reciprocation when it comes to friendships and bonds and love in general. But sometimes you just don't get that reciprocation, and it's true, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And the natural response is to want to detach yourself, to step away from something that just hurt you or someone that just hurt you. But the more I experience that in my life, the more I feel like it's the wrong way to look at friendships and bonds in general. Because if you're looking at it in the sense that it's give and take, it's like I have to put in effort, you have to put in effort too, or you think of the friendship in terms of like how much effort each person is putting in, it's like you're already losing because one side will always care more about the other side. It's just the way things are statistically, right? Like one person will care about the friendship more than the other person. It's just like true. Like it's hardly ever it's like completely equal. That's like very, very rare. So if you look at it that way and you're the one that cares about them more, you will always feel hurt and you're going to feel sensitive about the friendship in general. So for me personally, I've tried not to look at friendships in that way. I try to just say like, I care about this person is my friend. And because I care about them, you know, I'm just going to act in a way that aligns with that care. And it doesn't matter like what they do. I'm just going to do what I feel is right based on these emotions of care.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it is very rare for the relationship to be like equal in effort. But I do think that if you're on the side where you feel like you are putting in more effort for the relationship, like what you ultimately need to decide is like what you're getting from this particular friendship or relationship or whatever. Like, is it worth the effort that you're putting in, you know? So I think for a lot of people, they like put a lot out there and they receive like what they get, and they have a choice to make, like, is this what I want? Is this making me happy? Like this certain like relationship, this friendship, like this is worth it to me. But I think there is a certain like imbalance where if the person is not showing up for you and it's not like bringing you happiness, then there is like kind of a breaking point. And then, because I was talking with my therapist about this recently, of a certain relationship in my life, which I will not disclose, but we did have like the metaphor of how like my foundation of my friendship with this particular person is a little bit like shaky. And then so recent examples of them not showing up for me, they really hurt me like more than they would have if it was with someone that like I have a strong foundation with. Because like as I was repeating like, oh, this person did this, like I even recognized and told my therapist like, I know it kind of sounds, you know, kind of dumb, or like it's not a big deal, but she was saying like it is a big deal, and it feels like a big deal to me because this person has consistently like not shown up for me in our history of our relationship. So I think that's also like part of it. Like, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And it definitely, I'm sorry to hear that, you know, like that they haven't shown up for you and stuff. It's, would you say like you ask them to show up and like they still don't show up, or is it more like something that's like expected? Or
I think it's definitely expected for this particular person. Like I've known them for a very long time. And so I think at this point, I don't need to ask for those things. It's like really complicated.
Yeah. Relationships are complicated. Friendships can be complicated as well. But yeah, it's tough. I feel like communication is key, and if there's no good line of communication, or if someone refuses to communicate in a certain way, like a kind and transparent way, it becomes difficult to navigate like the friendship or relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess in my book so far, I've somehow managed to make my mindset that of as long as I care about you, I'll still try. Even the bare minimum of like contacting them maybe once or twice a year, you know? If I had that history with you, then I will give you that at the very least. And if there ever comes a time where, I don't know, maybe in their life they're having like a lot of positive things happening for them, like maybe if I reach out then by pure chance and luck, they'll be receptive, you know? So I guess that's like, I totally understand the whole like hurt thing and like not wanting, like reaching that breaking point. And there has to be a certain point where like you stop like giving so much emotional investment into this relationship or friendship. But for me personally, I still would like to try just with that bare minimum effort.
I see.
Yeah. Just for that small chance that we could connect again.
Yeah. I think that is very important. And I guess with all friendships and everything, it's like two people have to make it work. So if we're talking about like how to maintain long-term friendships, you can only control, your side of it. And so doing that, like reaching out consistently and like doing your best to resolve conflict and like building trust, like that's really all you can do. But I think, like probably the most important is just keeping that line of communication open, even if there's a long period of time where the other person, like they're going through something or like life happens and they live really far away and they're just not super receptive. Like there's always that chance that like one day they'll like, schedule a time to meet up with you or like go on a phone call with you. And then it just takes, I think, one good conversation to feel a lot more connected to someone, especially if you've already been friends with them like in the past, even if it's been like 10 years since you guys have spoken. So
I don't know, 10 years is a very long time. I don't know if I've ever like had that where I just talked to someone I've known like 10 years ago. Yeah, maybe certain friends that I'm not really thinking of on the spot, potentially. Yeah, passage of time is kind of fast these days, so maybe I've had friends like that, but yeah, I generally, it doesn't really matter too much. If the time that passes doesn't matter too much, like I'll always treat this person like, if we had that connection before, I'll always treat them like a friend,
Yeah.
And even to strangers, I feel like I tried my best to treat strangers with as if they are newly made friends,
Yeah. I feel like that's a strategy.
That's a strategy.
I mean, like, for lack of a better word, but that's how you make people feel comfortable and like familiar, even though you are strangers. It can accelerate that like initial friendship building.
Yeah, very much agree.
I do want to say though, like if it has been 10 years, I think that it depends on your stage of life. But for example, like we're around 28 years old and like 10 years ago we were teenagers. So like there's a high probability that we have changed a lot. And so I wanted to say that I think the more time that passes, the more you kind of have like to update the other person on your life. And so the conversation can be really fun. But at the end of that conversation, it's like you are not necessarily closer. Like you might discover that you guys have grown apart like drastically. But I do think that 10 years from now, like we'll be 38, the change in our mental or like the change in our personality, I feel like wouldn't be as drastic as from now to our teenage years. Like, what do you think?
Firstly, I definitely can see where you're coming from, but I feel like, of course we've matured. Of course we've changed since back then, since 10 years. If you haven't changed in 10 years, that's crazy. And probably not a good thing. Like change is essential to just like growing as a person. And I think obviously change can't all be positive, and there will be things where maybe we become more cynical about certain things. But I personally think in terms of the differences of 18 to like 28 or versus like 28 to 38, I think it really depends on what you're doing with your life. And if you have like a stable job and that's all you do from your late 20s to your 40s, then obviously not too much will change for you. But if you're like trying a whole bunch of new things, learning a lot and experiencing very new things as well, I think there's a lot to learn and a lot that can change as well. Like even more so than your like early 20s and stuff, just because you have that wisdom, you have that like skill and experience and that sort of like capability, that mindset of like pushing forward in new and different ways. That's what I think personally.
That makes sense. But with that being said, like, do you think it's one of your personal goals to continuously grow? And so like every 10 years, you're pretty different from what you were like in 10 years ago? And tying it back to long-term friendships, like if that's like our goal to be changing and growing like so much, like do you think that makes it harder to maintain long-term friendships? Because if we're all growing, like how likely is it that we're all going to be growing in the same direction? Like, do you feel like you kind of like outgrow people?
Ooh, outgrowing people. No, no. That's definitely not what's gonna happen. I feel like at the core of who I am personally, you're asking this question to me. I will always value the time I spend with my friends and the people that I care about. Like I will hold on to them as much as possible. And if they feel like I changed too much or they've changed too much and they don't want to be friends with me anymore for whatever reason, I'm still gonna hit them up anyways. Like every like year or so. It's just the way I operate in terms of that. And in terms of like continuously growing, it's not like changing the way you behave with like the friends you have right now or changing like how much you care about them, you know? The growing that I'm talking about is just like experiencing new things, becoming wiser, becoming like a more fulfilled person overall, and just achieving certain goals and like always leveling up in certain things, like stuff like that. Not really like overhauling like who you are completely, you know?
I see. But what if you get really famous?
What if I get I don't think that would ever really get to my head. I feel like, and yeah, assuming that ever happens, I don't think that would change too much other than me probably trying a lot harder to like keep certain things private.
Okay. What if what if like you become president of the United States and like your friendship circle becomes like past presidents and like, you know, really important high up people, or like everyone knows you, that kind of thing? Like how would you handle your long-term friendships with your current friends?
We've definitely gone into the deep end with this scenario, but if for some like crazy 1 in a trillionth chance that I become president,
heard it here first,
then I'd still try my best, obviously, but assuming that time is very, very sparse when you're as important as the president, it would probably be very difficult. But obviously you have to eat. As a person, you always have to eat, right? So just schedule lunches or dinners with friends. That's the best you can do. And if like you make so many new friends and stuff like that, it gets difficult. Yeah, that actually could be a possibility of like making too many friends to the point where like it's hard to like keep up with every single one of them.
Yeah, because it takes time and you have a limited amount of time.
Yeah, that could actually be a difficult thing to handle. But I feel like if they are true friends, you know, like they'll understand that you're busy, or they'll understand like if you don't respond right away, stuff like that. And eventually you'll hang out with them, right?
How would you handle the situation where, let's say like there's this like number floating around that is like you can have up to 100 close friends before it starts getting out of hand? Like, have you heard of that statistic?
Is it 100? I always thought it was like 50.
Oh, it's probably 50.
Let me look it up.
Okay. For example, if you have your list and you have ranked your friends and you have like your top 50, but what if you know someone who is like not even on your list and they're making the effort to try to be your friend, but you're just like not really into it? Like you feel a stronger connection with the other 50 people in your life. Like, would you then try to put more effort into the person who's making more effort for you? Like, do you kind of rank that someone is putting in effort? Do you weigh that more highly than other attributes of a long-term friendship?
Right. That's a good question. Well, firstly, let's correct what we both said. It's not 100. It's not 50. It's 150.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So
That's a lot.
that is a lot. So I'm not worried. If it's 150, well, first off, I feel like, again, that number is slightly made up. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different capacity. Like, for real,
Yeah.
like saying that everyone's capacity is 150 is kind of like way too general of a statement. But assuming that's true, to answer your question about giving priority to people who are giving me priority, I feel like I would do that. I feel like if someone is cool and I think they're cool and like they're trying to become friends with me and they're showing a good amount of effort, remember they have to be cool. I would totally be receptive to it, right?
Mm.
But obviously if that person's someone I feel uncomfortable with, or like someone I just don't really think is a great person, then or even like if I'm really busy and I just feel like I don't want to be giving too much time away to someone I don't really know very well.
Yeah.
Like, it could be that too. Then I will not prioritize them as much, even though they're prioritizing me, you know? But again, like I will still try my best to reciprocate if they are showing me that they care, you know?
Yeah. Okay, follow-up question. Have you ever met anyone who dedicates more time than you do to maintaining long-term friendship?
Oh, what an interesting question. I feel like this has become you interviewing me.
I know.
Yeah, but I like it. It's fun. Off the top of my foot, like
Off the top of your foot.
thinking on my foot. What's the phrase again? Thinking on the top of my head, right?
Yeah, top of my head.
Why did I say foot? Anyways, off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone that does it the same way I do, but I know like we do have a mutual friend that definitely tries to maintain her friendships. Like she has a list as well, like of her top friends and stuff. And she tries to maintain her friendships with them. But it's definitely not to the extent that I do it.
That's interesting. Like, did you find out when you found out that she also has a list? Was that kind of like oh, I have a list too? Or did she get that idea from you?
I think she already knew I had a list, or I I told her about my list and then she told me about her list. Yeah. But
I feel like I don't have enough people that I would need to make a list.
You never know. I mean, lists always start out small and then they continuously grow. So
That's true.
and it can be useful, even if it's like a few people. It can be useful to just like, because I have it on a Google Sheet and I have a thing where if I haven't said hi to them past a certain amount of time, it tells me to say hi to them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that helps me with, although I haven't checked the sheet in like the past 2 months just because it's been so busy, but
Oh, so you have to check it? Like it doesn't like send you an email?
no, it doesn't send me an email or anything like that. I have to check it. Google Sheets does not have that. Does it have that capability? I don't know. I don't
know, maybe. Well, it's all Google, so maybe.
Yeah, of course
There's
I
like
could
10 people waiting for you to say hi to them.
probably. But yeah, it depends on my capacity as well. So if it's like, usually holiday season is really busy, New Year's also. So once it reaches like a bit more of a lull period where there's not as much going on, I can open the sheet again and like hit some people up. Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah, I asked that because I think you are like, based on people I know, you're the person who is seriously like the most, like you put in the most effort into maintaining friendships. And I was actually thinking about this the other day, that like I feel lucky and I feel like our entire like generation or not like not our entire generation, like the people that we were surrounded by in high school and the people who are like, you know, connected to you, like we're really lucky to have someone like you, because I think that this isn't like common, you know, to have like someone who every year like brings us all together. Like at least for me, I think like that's how it all started for me, like because I went to your birthday party and I just like loosely like presented myself and people remembered that I existed. And I think that's why like, you know, my certain friend, like our mutual friend, reached out to me and like asked, you know, to be my roommate and stuff like that, which like jump started a bunch of other connections. Like I feel like it's a really special thing to have in my life that like not everyone gets, you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like you saying that, it's very heartwarming. A lot of our friends actually say that as well. Like they thank me for like always hosting it and and like bringing people back together, especially the past year after my birthday event. There was just so much like stuff afterwards with everyone, because like everyone started planning it like then and there at the event. So it was cool. Like I feel like that's why I have it, because I want everyone to like come back together and, well, firstly like play games that I make up.
Yeah, first and foremost.
But then also just to like get everyone together again and just like connect. Yeah,
it's interesting. I feel like that might be because of the whole thing where it's like you go to school, and then you are always like surrounded by so many people, and you kind of like take your friendships for granted because you're like, these people are always here. And then like college rolls around and you have like a little bit less. And now, as like more older adults as we are, I don't know how to phrase that better, but it's just like, I feel like a lot of people are realizing it is pretty hard to find and make really good friendships like as an adult.
definitely.
And having this kind of event is just like, it means a lot more, at least to me. Like, I realize how important it is to like maintain these friendships, and like,
Yeah. I think it's like even more important when like it's the catalyst that can help jumpstart a lot of friendships. And then once you've made those friendships, it's like the event then is just a celebration of like everyone together and having fun.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for mentioning that. And just like I definitely cannot take all the credit, because obviously everyone came and like talked to each other and connected that way. You know, everyone had their own intention and initiative, and it takes effort from everyone. So yeah,
I think yours is a special effort though, that like we didn't have to exert.
Thank you.
As
Okay.
someone who like is paralyzed by the thought of having any sort of event and inviting any sort of like person at all, like I think it's really like amazing.
Yeah, it definitely takes effort to put things together and invite people and stuff. It is scary. Whenever I do it, every year I feel like slightly nervous, even though I've done it like for years now. Like every single time I always feel just like a little, I guess, anxious, just a little bit, like messaging people I haven't messaged in a while. Especially people who say no like year after year after year, but I still invite them.
Oh.
But
like your conversation is just every year you say like, hey.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But they say they appreciate it, you know?
Yeah.
So like unless they completely ignore me, then if they at least message me back and say like, oh, I can't make it, but I appreciate it, you know, then I'll invite them again. If they completely ignore me, then 50-50, I might invite them again, I might not, you know?
Yeah.
But
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But thank you for like taking notice that it does take a lot of effort, and it's not like easy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it actually is really special.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I feel like we've talked quite a lot about friendships in general. And yeah, that was just our take on how to form friendships that last. Like, definitely leave in the comment below, like, what you think is sort of the recipe, the elements to forming friendships that do last like a long time. Thank you so much for coming on, Connie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Later.
Bye.